This is a dangerous groups that we're dealing with now. It was a nightmare.
Flight 807, you're clear for landing. Runway 7, Bravo. All personnel report to the nearest tornado shelter. This is not a drill.
If you need help, then dial your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.
Good morning and welcome to this week's edition of The Mediator with me, your host, Brian West, here to give you the top 8 headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Now, as usual, I'll give you the top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made it first, followed by a movie clip, a skit, a trailer, or something that's going on in the community, or maybe some pictures. And then I'll give you the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week, folks. So let's waste no time. Woo-wee! Let's get to it! Story number 1. What will the new event planner do for the city? Melanie Clark Piniella has been announced as Youngstown's new event planner. The position has been vacant since the start of the pandemic. Piniella will replace Terrell Vidal, who held the position before her some years back. Piniella has extensive experience in visual arts and will be serving in the position full time. This was story number 1, made it this week. Story number 2. What kind of summer will the nightlife bring locally? The Hatch Bar on the city's west side made headlines last Friday after a woman was stabbed at the city bar. This is one story headed into the summer season that will have local people wondering what type of vibes will fuel the nightlife this year locally. A lot of people have vowed to stay away from local bars, but stories like these continue to make headlines for people going out to trying to find a way to have a good time. Now, with crime in the news, it will be interesting to see how these stories develop. That's why story number 2 made it this week. Story number 3. Art stories are gaining traction in the Valley. Recent headlines show that people are turning to art for therapy and healing. How this evolves over time remains unknown. Now, one front page news article that made headlines Saturday, May 28th, focusing on the art house on Elm Road in Youngstown, is just one of many headlines to focus on when it comes to different methods used to bring people while bringing people into the world of creation. So these different methods. Now, art has been an outlet for a lot of people and continues to keep local people busy, creating a whole new world for people to see. So art is good. It's good. It's good for the spirit. It's good for the soul. It's good for the mediator. And it's good for life, folks. That's why story number 3 made it this week. Art is good. Expression is good. Big headline. Story number 4. Ministers and caregivers have been working hard in these tough times. Behind Closed Doors Ministries is just one of many ministries that have been making the news to lighten the load for local patrons. Local ministries and food banks have been busy, very busy lately, providing aid to families in need. With COVID-19 still in the news and a lot of people staggering to get back to work, local nonprofits continue to make headlines. The Red Cross has also been on the move as more and more bad news continues to hit the mainstream news. Now, many ministers are still holding services online, and some have yet to recover financially. That's why story number 4 made it this week. Thou shalt love thy ministers if thy ministers are ministering for the cause. Big head. Story number 5. COVID-19 is still fighting to stop local progress. COVID-19. The latest news shows that the COVID-19 monster, if I'm going to be exact, just won't stay down. This monster is a beast. For 8 straight weeks in a row, COVID cases have been back on the rise. just to reflect on all of the damage that COVID-19 has caused, we have to focus on the current financial state and the fact that people are still getting sick from this virus. The price tag on COVID-19 has literally crippled the poor and killed the feeble. This story is staying alive, and with more local deaths being reported, the COVID-19 stories are hanging on. That's why story number 5 made it this week. Big headline. Story number 6. Who is getting local pay raises? A local article from Girard discussing council pay raises has sparked some conversation talk about who deserves a pay raise or a bonus. Now, just last week, Headline News reported that CEO Justin Jennings will be receiving a $10,000 bonus, as reported by The Vindicator. The article went on to mention his annual pay. That's pretty sad when you got your pay all over. Everybody knows how much you're getting paid. That's pretty scary. Now, local patrons on the front lines of the COVID-19 war are complaining about basic affordability needs, with some having been brought to their knees in the fight to defeat COVID-19. Now, when you're a public servant, everybody knows your pay, but when some people aren't being able to pay their bills, then that could be a problem. Now, the simple fact is that more people on the workroom floor hear about board members and officers receiving pay raises, while they're most likely starting to speak out because they need some money. They're speaking up about their own pay and their own needs. Now, the biggest question in this local story is, should the people on the front lines be paid more or given higher bonuses, since they are the main piece of the puzzle in the fight to defeat COVID-19 or any battle trying to be won? This story is still developing. That's why it almost made it to the top 2 this week. Money is a big issue in this COVID war. Story number 7 in the top 2. Local headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Folks, I'm doing this for you, to keep you informed. That's all I can do in my allotted amount of time on this planet. I was born to mediate. That's all I've ever been good at. And that's why I'm here. So let's get to these top 2 stories that made it this week. Woo! Deliverance in every story, baby. Woo! Story number 7. The Ohio Congressional Map story is still making waves. The question is, in this story, is what would a fair redistricting map look like, and how effective would it be for Ohioans at the polls? Now, one African American group has dropped a claim against the Congressional Map. And I guess they were going to the courts. Now, the group led by the Reverend Kenneth L. Simon claimed that the new redistricting plans were aimed at suppressing the black vote, which are protected by the 1965 Voting Rights Act and the Constitution's 14th and 15th Amendments. The article surfaced Thursday, May 26, making front page news, and was followed by a headline informing residents that the Ohio Supreme Court has rejected proposed state maps for the 5th time in a row. Now, so they've rejected the state maps. Now, many say that the maps are not fair or balanced enough, and they lean too much towards the Republican Party. This story is still developing. That's why story number 7 made it to the top 2 this week. Big. Story number 8 at the top. Local headline and developing news story that made this week. Oh my goodness, we got a top story. Oh my goodness, you so crazy in the stories. Yeah. We did it. We reached the top. Hallelujah. Story number 8 for you. A long time ago, folks, local police were looked at differently. So now, story number 8, the local police stories continue. A long time ago, folks, long time ago, community activists in New York took to the streets and created programs to keep teens and youth out of trouble. This was a long time ago. These programs created street sounds like hip-hop music, breakdancing, and a wave of other art programs. To combat crime, Youngstown has aimed to beef up its police and surveillance forces. Youngstown, like many other major cities in America, have a history of crime problems that have created a section of society that have created the continued street wars that we see today. How this happened over time could be the only solution. Well, studying how this happened over time could be the only solution that Youngstown or any major city battling with crime may have. So studying it and evaluating how this happened to find a solution. The main debate in this story is how often we perceive these ongoing street wars. Some perceive them as bad, some perceive them as good, depending on what side of the fence you're on. Many seem of this battle, many of these stories seem unforgiving because of the stuff that's happening. I mean, you're talking about little kids getting shot, parents having to deal with this. That crime seems unforgiving because the parents will never look at that criminal the same again. Then you have prosecutors. They're all tied up in this story in lighter sentencing. People will go to jail, get out to kill again. But this big word in this story is justice. As the city struggles to find good officers, many wonder if this is the answer for a city with a history of violence, because people are getting very, very tired of trying to fix people and having less time to spend on fixing themselves. This story is still developing. That's why I started a rate made to the top this week. Well, folks, those are our top 8 local headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. I'll be right back with the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories. So don't you go anywhere. You're the Mediator with me, Brian West. I'll be right back.
Tune in and don't forget to subscribe to Method 8 Inc. YouTube channel. You can also watch free public entertainment. And don't forget to show some support by visiting www.method8inc.com by buying something, clicking something, watching something, or just reading something. You can also sponsor a program as well.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Folks, I am really starting to believe that there are, well, in the theory of two forces. You have negative and positive energy. And I am starting to believe that there is some negative energy trying to stop all living life from either making progress or enjoying their life. I mean, you look at some of these stories and it gives you the feeling of Tourette syndrome. Oh, what are you doing? Why? What for? Sit down! Shut up! These are the things that are happening and causing Tourette syndrome in people with common sense. We don't seem to see the picture clearly. And this is what continues to make headlines because common sense thinkers think neutrally and they want to make progress, but there's always a glitch, somebody doing something unusual that throws things off. And that's the message from this week is how do we discipline the undisciplined, fix the unfixable, and stop from breaking something that's not broken. Folks, there are two forces in this world, positive and negative. The negative energy's goal is to destroy all living life. So why not give life? Why not be the process of mediation, the force that awakens the masses and brings glory to the people? Hallelujah! Why not be that force? Why not be that positive force? Why not spend your time making progress? Well, folks, it's time to get to the top 8 international headlines. Let's get to it. Story number 1. Speaking of positive and negative, do prisoners matter, especially after they've served their time? More and more stories are surfacing about America's prison system, folks. Inmates are reporting being beaten up by other inmates. Some inmates are even releasing stories about getting close to being released, but later finding themselves in even harsher conditions and facing more time because of getting into it with a roommate or a guard. Some prison stories are even emerging in the field of sexual assault cases. There was one video came across where a girl was having a baby inside of her cell. This was at a juvenile facility, and they just left her there. Now, prisoners are also complaining about reentry programs back into society and how there are little to no opportunities for them to merge back into the normal day-to-day life that we all enjoy. Now, those with a felony on their record are also starting to make major news stories because prisoners and former inmates are doing everything that they can to get their voices heard, and about what happens on the inside. They're trying to tell people what happens on the inside, and some of them are even trying to keep people out of prison. Story number one, a big headline. That's why I made it this week. Big headline. Story number two, religious leaders are calling for revival, but they're facing opposition, and there's a reason. One headline about Venice tourists swimming nude in canals and vandalizing a church has made headlines. The fact is that religious leaders continue to face the challenges of keeping people active in faith without conflicts. The truth is that with the spread of information online, it has been very difficult for many religious leaders to have the influence that they once did years ago on the American culture. Now, this is making it very hard for what they would call revival. Religious leaders have also faced opposition due to scandals and other matters surrounding ministers and clergy leaders. The story continues to make headlines because religion has evolved, and religious leaders have said that the Bible or any religious text has remained the same even when times are changing. That's why story number two made it this week. Big headline. Story number three, the positive side of capitalism. Economists have been very busy lately, and inflation has made it no better, folks. Biden's plan to tax the rich seems to be falling apart, and poor and middle-class America are falling into a deeper hole due to the woes of rising gas prices and the slow financial recovery from COVID-19. The good thing about capitalism is that money can inflate and deflate depending on the circumstances and economic behavior. Now, some people are now taking to the airwaves to talk about today's dwindling work ethic, which they feel is very important, which it is important. One Fox News report about the dwindling value of the dollar is also sparking concerns about investments. Now, a weaker dollar means less spending power, and that's why story number three is gaining some steam, because capitalism, you need money, and if you don't have money, then that's very bad. Big headline. Story number four. How hard do college students have it? How hard? When you're seeking higher knowledge. Knowledge is power, correct? The debate now is about fairness. Is it fair for those who follow the rules to receive no compensation for paying off their loans and doing the right thing? Or is it fair for those struggling to be forgiven on college debt if they fall behind on their student loan payments? So the question is it fair for those who follow the rules, pay off their debts, to get nothing? Or is it fair for those who can't pay off their debts going through hardship to either get a head start or get forgiven? This is what the story is about. So how hard is it? This is big because either way, college students are gaining some spotlight because these forgiveness loan stories are staying alive. So how hard do college students actually have it? And this is what analysts will be looking at and evaluating, because this is big, because you're talking money. Now, this is the question now making headlines because college students are speaking out and keeping the college debt stories in the headlines and alive. The price of education is big, and when knowledge is power, it costs a lot of money. That's why story number four, such a big headline. Folks, well, those are our top four international headlines and developing news stories that I made this week. I'll be right back with the top four, so don't you go anywhere. You're the Mediator, me, Brian West. I'll be right back. If you want to check out the stories that almost made it in or did make it in, go to our Twitter feed on our website. Check out everything. All of the sources are there. It goes to the website. It's method8inc.com. Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top four international headlines and developing news stories that I made this week. Folks, I've been known to sometimes say some things that some people feel shouldn't be said, but sometimes what I've learned, especially being in this business of media, is that it's hard to solve problems if you can't point out what's wrong. And I guess that's the process of being a problem solver. And I often find myself alone because I'm always trying to solve these problems in it. I think some people like it and some people hate it, and it's very hard because you have to always try to find a solution. And there are a lot of people who just don't listen. And I learned this. I learned this around Mike when I was trying to be in relationships and find friends. Is that Brian's brain, just the way God made me, will will always try to find a solution to a problem. And I will say some things that will literally seem unusual because I have a hard time keeping what's in my thoughts in my mind and not out. And some people say that's a gift, some people say it's a curse, but that's the hardest part about this job, or finding stories. And not only that, but business owners face this. People who are in position of or either leadership positions, they find themselves being, some people like it and some people dislike it. But one thing I can say about being gifted to speak your mind in some situations is that you get this adrenaline rush, and then you find yourself apologizing. You say something like, you'll talk to somebody and you'll say, "You're beautiful on the inside, but you got some ugly toes." You'll say something like this, and then you'll say, "Oh, I can't believe I just said that. Oh, I'm sorry." But deep inside, it's the truth. The person has got ugly toes. And if they've got ugly toes, there's nothing that you or the person can do about it, because it's the truth. They have ugly toes. Ugly feet. You can try to put makeup on them, but they're ugly. This is the problem that I have as the mediator, often have, is that even my own flaws, I've always tried to tell people in this business you have to practice perfection, because people don't like things, and they'll sit up there and they won't tell you. And when they don't like something, it makes you feel bad, but it makes you better because you got to keep trying. No offense to people out there with ugly feet, but I'm sure you get the point. Is that as a problem solver, how you address things is different from everybody else. So, I'm sorry for being the mediator. I'm sorry for the way God made me. I'm sorry. I love women. I like them, but I don't get enough of them. I'm sorry, folks. I'm glad I get that off my chest. God made me this way. Let's get to it. Story number 5. Why so many foreign affairs stories matter to America. From Iran still striving to obtain a nuclear weapon to China sending 30 warplanes into Taiwan air defense zone, into Taiwan's air defense zones. China is making some moves. Foreign affairs stories are staying alive, and foreign stories not only affect the local market, but they shift the attention on why America is often sending aid to other countries. Now, this aid costs money, American taxpayer money. Now, what has this story still gaining attention is because aid money, like I said, is taxpayer money. But at the moment, U.S. taxpayers need a financial boost, and they're saying, hey, can we get some of that money back? Now, if foreign affairs and financial aid stories or financial stories continue to hit the Americans' pocketbooks, these stories could become major headlines. That's why story number 5 made it this week. Story number 6. Doctors and nurses are facing their own little fight, and it's testing their strength. One USA Today headline reads that doctors and nurses risk their lives. They're still risking their lives to battle COVID-19. Well, the headline reads that now they're facing a mental health crisis within themselves, within their own aisles. The issue is trust, folks, and learning, and the learning curve that we all face when we go to the doctors. This learning curve is when it comes to the business of health and health care. Doctors see people getting treatment and never reading valuable treatment information. Doctors and nurses also see people not knowing a lot about medical terms and the medical process. The larger the medical awareness gap gets, the more strain it will have on doctors and medical health professionals. This story is still developing because the need for medical professionals continues to grow. And this story almost made it to top 2 this week. Big headline. Story number 7 in the top 2 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. Woo-wee! Almost done. Another showdown, baby. Story number 7. Oil stories are getting everyone's attention. Once again, Oil and gas prices are really putting a hurt on people's spending power, folks. It's in many parts of the country, gas prices are above $5 a gallon. Never thought I'd see this day. As of June 2nd, crude oil prices were sitting at $112 per barrel. Conspiracies are now starting to float around that the elites are purposely squeezing the oil markets to steer demand to the electric vehicle market. Nobody knows how true this is, but this is what's going around. This is some of the talk. Now, whether true or not, everyone is keeping a close eye on oil stories. This story is still developing. That's why story number 7 made it to the top 2 this week. Story number 8 and the top international headline and developing news story that made it this week. I got you, bro. I got you. This story's for you. From the prophets. As a child, the prophets, they told me that I would be raised to be something great. That I would be raised to mediate. They put me up to the sky. Said, boy, do what you were born to do. Yeah. We got you, bro. Story number 8. Mediate, baby. Get to the top 8 stories. Story number 8, the top international headline and developing news story that made it this week. Guns are important, but a raging wave of victims are screaming for responsible gun owners, folks. Americans continue to see numbing gun stories, folks. Frightening stories. Children being shot while playing in the park, mass shootings at medical facilities, and another heartbreaking news story about a mass school shooting and what could have been done to limit the shooter's ability. These stories go back a long way, folks. Mass shooting stories go all the way back to the 1800s, but why they occur is the question, is in question. The equation has a few components. You have the gun, you have the person shooting the gun, and the mental state of the person with the gun. These are all also variables. These are also variables because without the gun, the person cannot shoot anyone, and without the person, the gun can't shoot. The mental state is the concern also because what causes a person to shoot another person has a lot to do with the motives, what motivates them to do it. Either way, you look at the story, victims are very concerned about how elected leaders will handle the continued wave of gun stories hitting the mainstream news. At the moment, they don't seem to be leaving the headlines, and there doesn't seem to be many solutions. And nobody knows how to solve this problem when you have millions of guns on the streets. That's why story number 8, such a big headline, made to the top this week, folks. Well, those are our top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made this week. I hope you got something out of today's program. I always get something out of the research. As usual, I'd like to thank all the news outlets, the journalists, the people on the front lines, the media. You deserve all the credit. I'm just the man in the middle, the mediator. The man is trying to scoop up all the news to give out and try to find the top stories. If you want to show some support here at Method 8, it does not take much. All you have to do is visit the website on the screen, buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or to sponsor a program, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in this week. Have a good week, everybody. Thank you for tuning to the Mediator with me, Brian West. I'll be back next week looking through over 200 more stories just to keep you informed. Peace.
If you need help, then dial your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.